My name is Tessa Navarro, and I'm 29 years old. If you met me now, you'd think my life had always been like this: clean apartment, decent coffee machine, laptop on the table with too many calendar invites, a boyfriend who texts, "Don't forget breakfast," instead of, "Are you still alive?" You'd see the woman who runs her own consulting agency, answers emails in a blazer, and has a fridge with both food and a working light bulb. You wouldn't see the girl who lived in a metal box. You wouldn't see the note. I was 17 the night my family ghosted me in real life. I came home from my shift at the gas station, reeking of off brand nachos and gasoline, my back aching from 8 hours on my feet. It was one of those winter evenings where the cold feels personal, like the wind is mad at you specifically. I remember thinking how good it would feel to collapse on the ugly brown couch and pretend my homework didn't exist. Except when I opened the door, the couch wasn't there. Nothing was. The TV stand, gone. The framed "Live, Laugh, Love" sign my mom bought on clearance, gone. Even the weird cactus she used to name after failed politicians, gone. The house wasn't robbed, it was erased. My footsteps echoed in the empty living room. The hollow sound made my chest tighten. I called out, "Mom?" Nothing. "Dad?" Just the buzz of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I walked in, hoping this was some messed up prank. On the counter, right where we kept the mail and the unpaid bills, was a single sticky note, bright yellow, crooked, 5 words written in my mother's stiff cursive, the kind people use when they still sign checks like it's 1973. "You'll figure it out. Mom." Underneath, in smaller, angrier letters, my dad had added, "We left. We expect you to survive it." No love, no explanation, no address, just a resignation letter from my own family. For a second, my brain tried to make it reasonable. Maybe they'd just gone ahead to a new place and planned to send for me. Maybe something urgent happened. Maybe there was a part 2 to this conversation I hadn't walked in on yet. But deep down, it wasn't a surprise. Not really. I'd never been the family MVP. My mom's favorite was my younger brother, Caleb, the cello prodigy with the orthodontist-approved smile and a resume groomed for Ivy League applications. Caleb got imported herbal tea when he had a sore throat. When I had bronchitis, Mom handed me a lukewarm mug of orange juice and said, "You're tough. You'll be fine." My dad could rebuild a carburetor blindfolded, but never remembered my birthday without Facebook reminders. I was the ghost in the hallway, the kid who was fine even when I was clearly not. So, no, it wasn't out of character that if someone was going to be left behind, it would be me. But knowing that doesn't make standing in an empty kitchen with a sticky note in your hand hurt any less. I sank onto the bare floor. The tile was cold through my jeans. My throat burned, but the tears wouldn't come, like my body was on a delay. I checked my phone. No missed calls. No messages. I called my mom. Straight to voicemail. My dad. Voicemail. Caleb. Number disconnected. They hadn't just moved out. They'd moved on. That night, I didn't sleep in my suddenly spacious, echoing house. I couldn't. The silence felt too loud. So I grabbed my backpack, 2 changes of clothes, my school notebooks, and exactly $47 in crumpled cash, and walked back out into the freezing air. I ended up at a 24-hour laundromat. You learn a lot about people watching them fold their clothes at 2 a.m., couples arguing in whispers, exhausted moms trying to keep toddlers awake just long enough to get through the spin cycle, college kids napping on plastic chairs. I curled up in the corner by the vending machines, hugging my backpack like it was life support. My dinner was a bag of stale chips and a warm soda that tasted like metal and regret. The next few weeks were a patchwork survival map. A night on a classmate's couch whose parents thought I was just staying over for a group project. 2 nights in the back seat of a car that wasn't mine. A few hours at the school library until the librarian started recognizing me. Eventually, I found it. A self-storage place downtown that didn't ask a lot of questions as long as you paid in cash. Unit 3B. 10 feet by 10 feet. Concrete floor, metal walls that sweated when it rained. Technically not legal to live in, but I wasn't technically living there. I was storing things. Those things were me. I bought a cheap blanket from a thrift store that smelled like cigarettes and someone else's life. I folded it on the floor, using my backpack as a pillow. My pantry was a shoebox filled with peanut butter crackers and instant noodles. I used a dollar store flashlight until the batteries died, then just lay in the dark, listening to the hum of fluorescent lights from the hallway. For showers, I went to the YMCA and pretended I'd just finished a workout. I dried off with an old t-shirt and prayed no one noticed I didn't have a gym bag. It was awful. But I didn't die. In fact, I started going to school more. The cafeteria had heat. The library had outlets. Teachers stopped asking why I was always tired and just assumed I was working hard. They weren't wrong, just not in the way they thought. I picked up a job at a local diner in the evenings, on top of the gas station. That was where I met Denise, the manager who'd survived 3 divorces and had zero tolerance for whining. She ran the place like a boot camp. "Table 3 wants decaf and hope," she'd bark. "You can give them one of those things." She wasn't warm exactly, but she was consistent. And when she found me asleep in the break room once, head on my folded arms, she didn't yell. She just slid a plate of leftover pancakes toward me and said, "Eat fast. Cry later. Customers first." That job didn't just give me money. It gave me rhythm, a reason to wake up that wasn't just getting through the next hour. I memorized the rush patterns, the regulars' orders, the way Denise's voice softened, just barely, when she said, "Good work, kid." At night, back in Unit 3B, under the buzzing lights and the smell of dust and motor oil, I made myself a promise. I stared at that sticky note, now wrinkled and smudged from how often I'd unfolded it. "You'll figure it out. We expect you to survive it." "Okay," I whispered into the dark metal box. "I will. And one day, you're going to wish you hadn't written this." Rock bottom, as it turns out, builds more than character. It builds back problems and a very specific kind of stubbornness. Between the grave shift at the diner and half-awake homework, I started using Denise's office computer when she wasn't looking. At first it was just background noise, YouTube videos playing while I filled ketchup bottles and wiped down counters. Then I stumbled into personal finance YouTube. There was this guy, Finance Greg, whose vests were always 2 sizes too small and who yelled things like, "Debt is a disease," like he was half motivational speaker, half televangelist. He was ridiculous. I loved him. I took notes on receipt paper. I watched budgeting tutorials. I Googled how to sound professional in an email without sounding like a robot. I made a list in my notebook titled, "Future Me, Not Homeless, Hopefully." The list had 3 items. Get out of the storage unit. Get a job that doesn't smell like fryer grease. Make enough money that a sticky note never decides my fate again. It wasn't glamorous. My instant noodles were seasoned with depression. I slept in my jacket because the blanket wasn't enough. One time I washed my socks in a YMCA sink with a free hotel shampoo sample I'd scavenged from the lost and found. But something small and stubborn inside me stayed vertical. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was training. And I had no idea that the girl lying on that cold concrete floor would become the woman strangers would later email, because her podcast episode made them cry in their cars. Back then, I was just 17, homeless, and furious, with a vow, a flashlight, and a secret spreadsheet scribbled in a battered notebook. When I look back, I don't remember a single turning point. No grand aha moment, no inspirational montage. It was more like climbing a staircase in the dark, one step at a time, one bruise at a time, one tiny victory I barely noticed until years later. The first shift happened with a Craigslist ad. Data entry, remote, paid via prepaid Visa cards. Must know spreadsheets. I didn't know spreadsheets, but I knew YouTube existed. So I spent 2 nights in Denise's office watching tutorials on Excel functions until my eyes dried out. Sum, VLOOKUP, conditional formatting. I learned them like survival skills. I applied. They hired me. The job was shady, the pay inconsistent, and the instructions sometimes looked like they were written by someone hiding from the IRS, but it was money. Better than nothing. Better than being trapped in Unit 3B. And slowly, painfully, something shifted in me. My budget spreadsheet, hand-drawn in a beat-up notebook, started to look less like a crisis map and more like a plan. My emergency column went from red to yellow to, after months, green. Green. That green meant freedom. With enough scraped-together savings, I left the storage unit and moved into a basement studio apartment that smelled like wet carpet, mildew, and ambition. The radiator hissed like it disapproved of me. The one window faced a brick wall that blocked out hope and sunlight equally. But it was mine. The first night I slept in that basement, surrounded by the hum of pipes and the faint scent of the neighbor's questionable cooking, I cried, silently, into a pillow someone on Marketplace gave me for free. The silence hurt, but in a way that felt good, safe. The next shift was college. Community college, because anything else was a fantasy. IT classes, finance classes, systems design, anything that sounded like it could someday pay rent. I biked 45 minutes each way to save on bus fare. I'd sit in class exhausted from the diner shift and pretend I understood what network topology meant. Denise started calling me Ms. College. She said it sarcastically. But she also started giving me leftover pie by accident. I started freelancing too. Websites for local pet groomers. Inventory spreadsheets for small businesses run by owners who were one meltdown away from selling everything and escaping to Arizona. They paid in cash, pastries, sometimes shampoo for their poodles. Every dollar I earned stretched itself thin, like it was training for a marathon. But I was stretching too. At 23, I landed my first real job, a salaried job, with onboarding paperwork and a badge and a welcome email that said, "We're excited to have you on the team." The HR lady asked about my college GPA. I smiled and said, "I graduated from the University of Getting It Done." She laughed. I got the job. And just like that, I wasn't surviving anymore. I was becoming. By 25, I was promoted to lead analyst. Better desk, better chair, slightly better coffee in the break room. I celebrated by buying a secondhand leather office chair off Craigslist. It squeaked like it had unresolved trauma, but when I sat in it, I felt like a person with a future. I kept freelancing on the side, late nights, early mornings, lunch breaks in phone booths with terrible Wi-Fi. I wasn't just stacking money. I was building escape velocity. The idea of starting my own consulting agency stopped sounding delusional and started sounding overdue. So one day I did it. Registered an LLC, slapped my name on a website, bought a used laptop that didn't wheeze every time I opened Chrome, then hired a web designer part-time, then an admin who typed like an anime hacker and had the emotional resilience of a Navy SEAL. We grew, quietly at first, then rapidly. I wasn't flashy. I wasn't one of those LinkedIn influencers yelling about synergy and hustle culture. I just did the work, quietly, consistently. Then one day the quiet got loud. A startup founder I'd helped untangle a year of technical chaos invited me onto his podcast. I almost said no. I hated hearing my recorded voice like an insecure raccoon trying to sound professional, but he insisted. I told a short version of my story, the polished version, the version that didn't mention sleeping in a storage unit. The episode went modestly viral, not Kardashian viral, but viral enough that I woke up to 72 unread emails and a calendar that looked like it had food poisoning. Business exploded. But the message that mattered most wasn't a client request. It was from Caleb, my brother, the golden boy, the kid who once got homemade herbal soup for a sore throat. "Saw your podcast. We should talk." No punctuation, no apology, no acknowledgement of the years of silence. Just the expectation that we could pick up where they had dropped me. I stared at it for 5 full minutes, heart thudding like I'd swallowed stones. Then I closed my laptop before the feelings could swallow me whole. The next day, another message arrived, this time from my mother. "Your voice hasn't changed at all. So proud of you. Can we reconnect?" Proud. Proud of the daughter she left with nothing but a sticky note? I didn't respond. Not then. Not yet. But that night, lying next to my boyfriend Mark, steady, kind, warm-hearted Mark, I felt something crack open inside me. Not pain, not anger. A question. Why now? I didn't have an answer, but I knew I'd have to face it. Soon. I didn't reply to my mother or to Caleb, not for days. I carried their messages around like splinters lodged beneath the skin. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach knotted, even when it was just Mark texting something gentle like, "Dinner at 7? I'll pick up those dumplings you like." Mark was steady in a way that used to make me suspicious. Men with calm eyes and patient voices felt like a setup, like silence before a slam. But Mark wasn't a storm hiding behind politeness. He was a harbor. He never pushed, never demanded, just stayed. So when I told him, carefully, awkwardly, that my family had reached out after 12 years of silence, he didn't say, "You should talk to them," or "Family is family." He just said, "Do you want to?" And I didn't know. I didn't know anything except that their sudden interest felt like a hook disguised as olive branches. My therapist told me to wait until the answer didn't feel like panic. It took a week. Then I replied to Caleb with one word. "Where?" He answered in 10 minutes, like he'd been staring at his phone waiting for it. "Old coffee shop near the university. Saturday, noon." I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no. Saturday arrived with rain. Of course it did. Every movie about painful reunions has rain. Maybe the universe likes cliches. I wore jeans and a plain black sweater, nothing that screamed revenge outfit, Nothing that whispered vulnerable either. I brought my laptop in case I needed an excuse to leave. The coffee shop hadn't changed. It still smelled like overpriced tea and failed college dreams. I spotted Caleb instantly. Same posture, same smile, older but not by much. He looked up when I approached. "Hey," he said softly, like we'd run into each other at Target. Not like my entire childhood was sitting between us. "Hey." I sat, we stared. He gestured to my outfit. "You look good." I wanted to say, "Success does that when you're abandoned and forced to fight for every inch," but I swallowed it. A beat of silence stretched. He fiddled with the coffee lid. "Mom's been trying to reach out too. She feels terrible." I raised an eyebrow. "Does she? Or is this what guilt looks like when someone becomes Googleable?" He flinched. "Okay, fair." More silence. "She always said you were strong," he added quietly. "She said you'd land on your feet." I blinked. "That's a weird way to justify throwing a kid off the roof." He winced. "Tess, I didn't know. I swear. They told me you left, that you wanted independence. I was a kid. I believed them." I didn't let him off that easily. "I was 17, Caleb. Old enough to work, old enough to pay taxes, but not old enough to be abandoned." His jaw tightened. "I'm sorry." It didn't fix anything, but it didn't hurt to hear. He took a breath. "They're not doing great. Dad lost his job, bills piled up. They thought maybe, if we reached out." There it was, the why. Not love, not guilt, not closure. Money. "I'm not your lottery ticket," I said. "Tessa, that's not—" "You're here to cash in." He didn't argue, and somehow that honesty softened me just a sliver. I stood gathering my bag. "Tell Mom I got the message. Tell her I'm glad she's proud. Tell her I'm proud too, for leaving when I did." I left him sitting there, staring into a coffee he wasn't drinking. 2 days later, my mother emailed again. A 4-paragraph wall of nostalgia and revisionist history. She wrote about my Batman costume, about the time I fell asleep on the couch next to Caleb, about my 7th birthday cake, the one I baked from a box mix because no one else remembered. She attached photos. Me with frosting on my nose. Me holding a snow cone. Me grinning like the world hadn't shown its teeth yet. She wrote, "You had such a big heart. I know it's still in there." I closed the laptop. I paced the apartment. I tried not to break anything. That night, my therapist asked, "If they didn't want something from you, would you still want to talk to them?" The answer slid out before I could stop it. No. But curiosity is its own poison. So when my mother asked to meet just once, I agreed. Neutral ground. A diner halfway between our neighborhoods. Vinyl booths that stuck to your legs. A jukebox that hadn't worked since Obama's first term. She arrived 10 minutes early, polished as ever, her smile tight, like she was preparing to host a PTA meeting instead of begging for relevance. "You look good," she said. "So do you," I lied. We exchanged small talk that felt like wearing someone else's skin. And then, finally, she started. "I know what we did was hard to understand, but you were always so independent. You never asked for help." "I was 17, I said. "You were resourceful." "I was 17. She flinched. "I thought you'd land on your feet," she whispered. "No, you hoped I'd disappear. You hoped the problem would solve itself." Her eyes glossed over. "I'm sorry," she said, and for half a second it almost sounded real. Then she ruined it. "Things are different now. We're struggling. Your father's in a bad place. Caleb can't carry everything. If you could just help, temporarily." I laughed, not kindly. "You didn't call when I was sleeping in a storage unit eating crackers for dinner," I said. "But now that I'm successful, you suddenly found my number?" She reached across the table, voice trembling. "You were always the strong one. Being strong doesn't make me disposable." She had no answer. I placed a 20 on the table, stood, and walked out. No note left behind. The quiet afterward wasn't real quiet. It was the quiet before something breaks. 3 days later, my father emailed. "Your mother said you were cold. We didn't raise you to be selfish." I closed the message without responding. Then Caleb texted, "Can we try family therapy? Just one session?" I muted the thread. The next weekend, my apartment intercom buzzed. I pressed the camera feed. It was my father, older, harsher, still carrying that same expression, like disappointment was something he wore proudly. He didn't speak, he just waited. I ended the call, then locked the building lobby from my phone. Minutes later, a text arrived. "You owe us a conversation." I owed them nothing. But the nightmares returned. Me locked outside, me begging for help, me reading that sticky note over and over, hoping the words had changed. My therapist said, "You didn't break the cycle by confronting them. You broke it by not becoming them." It helped, a little, but the anxiety kept humming under my skin. And when the knock came on my door 2 weeks later, my whole body tensed, expecting my mother or father or another guilt-laced message shoved into my hands. Instead, it was a woman in a raincoat, hair in a messy bun, holding a gift bag. She looked nervous, hopeful, determined. "Hi," she said. "I'm Jenny." I blinked. "Jenny, I'm married to Caleb." "Oh." She held out the gift bag like it might explode. "I didn't come to argue. I found something, and I don't think it belongs with them anymore." Inside the bag was a photograph. Me, age 6, holding a snow cone, smiling like I didn't know what disappointment tasted like yet. "I found it in their attic," she said softly. "It didn't feel right staying there." I stared at the picture, throat tight. She shifted on her feet. "They're not good people, Tessa. I didn't understand until recently. They've told Caleb 100 different stories about you. None of them made sense." I swallowed hard. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Jenny sighed. "Because he's finally starting to question them," she said. "And he needs someone who won't lie to him." She stepped back, giving me space. "Don't block his number yet," she whispered. "He's trying." She turned to leave. "Jenny," I said, voice cracking. "Why help me? You're not family." She looked over her shoulder. "Maybe not by blood," she said, "but truth doesn't need DNA." And just like that, a door that had been welded shut for 12 years cracked open, just enough for light to get in. 3 days after Jenny's visit, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a guilt trip. It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't another attempt to pull me into a family therapy ambush. It was a message from Caleb. Simple, quiet, raw. "I'm sorry for everything. I didn't know how much they lied. I didn't want to believe it." For the first time in a long time, I believed him. Not because he deserved it, because he sounded like a man who'd run out of excuses. We agreed to meet in a park, neutral ground. No parents, no dramatics. Just 2 adults sitting on a sun-warmed bench under a sky that felt too blue for the heaviness between us. Caleb looked rough, not physically, emotionally, the way people look when the scaffolding of the stories they were raised on collapses beneath them. He took a shaky breath. "I kept thinking I could fix it," he admitted. "Like if I got you all in the same room, everything would make sense again." I shook my head. "Some rooms are fire hazards," I said softly. "They're not meant for rebuilding." He winced but didn't disagree. "They told me you left because you didn't want us anymore, that you were rebellious, ungrateful, cold." I felt my throat tighten. "I was 17, I said again. Quiet, exhausted. It was less of a correction and more of a funeral for the lie he'd lived with." "I know," he whispered. "Now I know." He pulled out a folded sheet of paper. For a terrifying second, I thought it was a bill or a contract or some new manipulation. But it was a list. Handwritten names, dates, events, emails, receipts. "We made this," he said. "Jenny and I. We wrote down every inconsistency, everything they told us that didn't add up. We went through old photos, emails, bank statements, all of it." I raised an eyebrow. "You cross-referenced family trauma with receipts?" He cracked a laugh, small, surprised, real. "It was either that," he said, "or drink whiskey in the garage and cry." Jenny picked spreadsheets. Despite myself, I laughed. The first real laugh I'd had with him in more than a decade. Then his face grew serious. "They've gotten worse," he admitted. "Angrier, paranoid. They think we're conspiring against them. Last night, Dad came to our house. Didn't knock, just stood in the driveway staring at us." A cold shiver crawled up my spine. "That's not guilt," I said. "That's intimidation." Caleb nodded. "We're getting a lawyer," he said. "Restraining orders, something official. Jenny refuses to let Lily grow up around this." "You're serious?" I asked. He nodded again. "We'd both feel safer with a paper trail." I took a breath, slow, steady. "Do you want to stay at my place?" I asked quietly. "Just until it's handled." He looked startled, almost ashamed. "You'd let us?" "You're not them," I said. "And you showed up. That counts for something." They moved in that weekend. Jenny arrived first, carrying 3 boxes and a labradoodle named Waffles, who immediately peed on my welcome mat like he was christening the territory. Caleb took the couch without complaining. Jenny took over my kitchen like a woman trying to reverse a decade of microwave trauma. Lily, 5 years old, hair in messy pigtails, ran circles around my coffee table before drawing me with a cape and writing, "Super Aunt Tessa," in shaky bubble letters. My apartment, once a quiet fortress, became a small, chaotic sanctuary. They called it the recovery wing. At night, we cooked together, watched movies, talked about everything and nothing, breathed without fear. For a moment, I almost forgot the storm outside. The legal process was hell. Statements, documentation, evidence. Emails from my father. Threats disguised as concerns. A printed photo left outside my door, a picture of me, Caleb, and Lily at the park. No envelope, just a silent threat. We reported it all. Our lawyer said the judge would take it seriously. And they did. My parents didn't show up at the hearing. Their lawyer dropped them. The judge granted full protection orders. It wasn't victory, it wasn't revenge, it was air. Room to breathe. That night, Jenny opened a bottle of cheap champagne and poured it into mismatched coffee mugs. To peace by paperwork, she declared. We clinked. We laughed. We let our shoulders finally relax. The next morning, the apartment was quiet in a way that didn't feel dangerous. Not haunted, not suffocating, just calm. Waffles snored on the rug. Jenny flipped pancakes. Caleb helped Lily with a reading app that somehow involved explosions. Mark sat beside me on the couch, sipping coffee, brushing my knee with his hand in that grounding way he had. It felt unreal. A life that didn't hurt. A family I didn't have to audition for. A place where no one left notes. That afternoon, a letter arrived in my mailbox. From my mother. 5 pages long. She said she didn't agree with the court's decision. Said they meant well. Said some children don't appreciate what's done for them. Said she missed Caleb and Lily. Said maybe, someday, we could talk like adults. I didn't finish the final page. I put the letter back in the envelope and returned it to sender. That evening, I stood on the balcony with Caleb while the city hummed below us. You think they'll ever really stop? He asked quietly. I don't care, I said. They're not in the story anymore. He nodded, then smirked lightly. You ever think we'd end up like this? I looked through the sliding door, at Jenny stirring a pot of soup, at Mark helping Lily build a blanket fort, at Waffles chewing on one of my old socks. No, I admitted, but I'm glad we did. Jenny joined us with tea. Mark wrapped an arm around my waist. Lily shouted something about dragon cupcakes. I thought about 17-year-old me, cold, scared, clutching a sticky note in a metal box. I wish I could tell her, you don't get the family you're born into. You get the one you build. Because I built one. A brother who finally grew up. A sister-in-law who chose truth. A niece who draws me with a cape. A boyfriend who stays, who listens, who loves without fear. A home with no more notes. Not perfect, not painless, but mine. And this time, no one is leaving.